Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global, our rebranded show every night at 10:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. We begin with the most anticipated meeting on the world stage between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. This time, Zelenskyy is not arriving alone. He's joined by top European Union leaders, hoping to bring collective pressure and unity to the talks. Their presence also highlights how high the stakes are, especially after the ugly fallout during Zelenskyy's last visit to the White House. In fact, the leaders have started arriving. You can see Macron, Melanie, Mark Rutte is already there. The German Chancellor, Merz, also joining in, President of Finland. So a whole lot of European leadership, von der Leyen, greeting Zelenskyy there. A whole lot of European leaders will be there beside President Zelenskyy when he enters the Oval Office yet again. Now, in a post on his social media platform, Donald Trump said, and I quote, "A big day at the White House. We have never had so many European leaders here at one time. A great honor for America. Let's see what the results will be." The meeting comes in the wake of Trump's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, where Trump notably softened his position, dropping the demand for an immediate ceasefire and seeming to lean toward Moscow's narrative. That dramatic shift has left Zelenskyy and European leaders with fewer options and sparked serious concern among Ukraine's allies. Many fear the US could now push for a peace deal on Russia's terms.
All eyes are on Washington. As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is meeting Donald Trump in Washington, this is the toughest talks of his presidency. Here is the dilemma Zelenskyy is going to face. Is Donald Trump's wrath or accept a quick peace deal that might end Russia's war, but at the catastrophic price of giving up land for vague security guarantees? Guarantees fear that it could collapse in just a few years, letting Moscow come back even stronger. The bind comes after Trump's dramatic summit with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. There, the US president quietly dropped his earlier demand for an immediate ceasefire before negotiations, a move that looked like he's siding with Moscow's line. That shift leaves Zelenskyy with little room to maneuver, and the memory of his last White House visit hangs heavy. A bitter clash with Trump in February that even led to a pause in US military aid.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good. We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position.
This time, Zelenskyy won't walk in alone. Zelenskyy is accompanied by a group of European leaders, which includes NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and Finland's President Alexander Stubb, both of whom Trump actually gets along with personally. Still, Europe's leverage is questionable, and allies haven't always agreed on strategy. For Zelenskyy, the objectives are clear. Find out exactly what Putin is demanding, pushing Trump towards a trilateral meeting with Moscow, and press for tougher sanctions against Russia. After Alaska, Trump signaled that he'll urge Zelenskyy to move fast on a peace plan. And Trump sounded open to Russia's harshest demands, including Ukraine giving up huge chunks of territory in the east, land Moscow's forces have been trying to seize since 2014. Zelenskyy earlier spoke in Brussels alongside European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen.
Putin has many demands, but we do not know all of them. And if there are really as many as we heard, then it will take time to go through them all. It's impossible to do this under the pressure of weapons. So it's necessary to cease fire and work quickly on a final deal.
Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, even floated the idea that Washington and others could give Ukraine an Article 5-style guarantee, the kind NATO members enjoy. That would mean an attack on Ukraine and would be treated like an attack on all. Trump, meanwhile, is under his own pressure. He promised he did end the war within months of taking office. But after Alaska, he had to admit it's Putin who isn't ready to stop fighting. In fact, Russia has escalated, with June and July the deadliest months for civilians in more than 3 years. Before meeting Putin, Trump threatened crippling sanctions on Moscow and its oil buyers if a ceasefire did not happen. After the summit, complete with a red carpet welcome and even a shared limo ride with Putin, he dropped these threats, instead pitching a so-called land swap. Zelenskyy immediately rejected it, saying Ukraine won't trade land for peace. He insists only direct talks with Russia, with US involvement, can settle territorial questions. Trump has openly said he believes Russia can take the whole of Ukraine. Yet after 4 years of war and more than 1 million casualties, Moscow controls less than a fifth of the country. European leaders, meanwhile, worry that bending now will only embolden Putin to go further.
It's important that America agrees to work with Europe to provide security guarantees for Ukraine, and we are very thankful to the United States and to the President for such signal.
So as the meeting is underway in Washington, will Trump force Kyiv into a rushed deal that cements Russia's gains? Or can Ukraine and its ally rest real, lasting guarantees from Washington? With Shaurik Saha, India Today Global.
And joining me to discuss this and more, I'm being joined by Michael Busacchio, who is Global Affairs Analyst and Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Also joining me is our colleague Rohit Sharma from Washington, D.C. He'll be joining us in just a bit. Michael, if I could begin with you. European leaders and Zelenskyy, all of them in that one room, the Oval Office, a stark reminder of what it meant to Zelenskyy the first time around he met with Trump in that office. But is it going to be any different this time around?
Hi, Gito. It's great to be with you. Well, I think we should separate the spectacle from reality. Yes, it's great for Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, such a show of support from European leaders. But look, at the same time, we're also talking about pretty much the same European leaders who dragged their feet to provide Ukraine with the support that it asked for at the start of the war to push Russia back. It's also taken up till now for the EU to provide 18 packages of sanctions to tighten the noose around Mr. Putin. And let's not forget as well that there's still 200 and almost 300 billion euros of frozen Russian assets sitting in European banks, and European leaders nervous to give that to Ukraine to continue the war. The bottom line here, I think, for Europe is that if Mr. Putin is not pushed back, one of their countries could be a target in the very near future. One more point, if I may. Lots of talk, of course, as your excellent correspondent laid out, that about security guarantees. And I think at the moment, all things considered, the United States security guarantees mean very, very little unless the U.S. is the main backer. That's just the reality of the current situation. So it's difficult to see what may come out of today, especially when it seems when Mr. Putin was in Alaska, he drank some kind of spiked Russian Kool-Aid where he's espousing the Russian narrative of giving up land.
But that certainly is what supposedly, Michael, is going to be on the table. Tell us what it would mean to give up land. We're not talking about a land swap over here because there is no swap to happen. The specific demand or ask is to give up the Donbas region, and particularly a strategic port such as Crimea, the only warm water port that Russia or Ukraine, for that matter, could really have. Ukraine does have Mariupol as well, but a very critical space for Russia. Will Zelenskyy agree to this, and should he agree, would this not be a complete political suicide for him?
It would absolutely be a political suicide for him. No Ukrainian president could agree to such a big deal and go home and expect to be greeted with warm embraces from his people. I think it could cause another Maidan protest. And by the way, as you well know, Gita, Mr. Zelenskyy is hemmed in by the Ukrainian constitution. He doesn't have the authority to give away land. As far as we understand, because things are still a bit murky right now, the area of land that the Russians want to be given over to them represents almost 250,000 of Ukrainian civilians. As you know, I've been in Ukraine since the start of the war. I've talked to Ukrainians
That's
in all
right.
regions of the country. They compare coming under Russian occupation as hell on earth, No way that's going to happen. So the other thing we have to mention here is that Mr. Zelensky is on a little bit more political shaky ground than he was during that first Oval Office meeting, the disastrous one. You'll recall a few weeks ago, he tried to decapitate the anti-corruption bodies. That sparked protests for the first time, massive protests in Ukraine. It's caused cracks in the political alliance. And then finally, I should mention to you, because I've just come out of Ukraine, is that I'm sensing a lot more weariness about this war. People want it to stop. All the blood that has been spilled, the wobbly economy, and the nightly attacks, including last night on World Port Odessa, which helps feed the world.
Right. Michael, stay on with us. The news that we reported on through today is that Russia has launched one of its largest combined drone and missile attacks in recent weeks. Overnight, Russian forces fired 4 Iskander-M ballistic missiles and launched approximately 140 attack drones, including Shaheeds and drone decoys from multiple locations in Russia and occupied Crimea. Ukrainian defense forces, supported by Air Force units, anti-aircraft missile systems, mobile fire groups, and electronic warfare teams, responded quickly, managing to shoot down or disable 88 of the incoming drones. Russian strikes were reported in 25 locations across 6 regions: Donetsk, Kharkiv, Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, Odessa, and Kiev. One of the deadliest hits occurred in Kharkiv's industrial district, where a drone strike ignited a massive fire in a residential building. At least 5 people were killed. In the Sumy region, 4 drones targeted civilian infrastructure, sparking fires. Ukrainian officials say they remain vigilant as these attacks continue to target both military and civilian sites. Michael, again, coming back to you, we're looking at no halt in the firing that is going on, or the action that's going on in these regions, in these parts, even as the meeting between Putin and Trump took place, and a meeting between Zelensky and Trump is to take place in moments from now. Okay, these are live visuals coming in. That's Zelensky, who's just arrived at the White House, being received by Trump at the porch. Not so long ago, we had the very same visuals that we'd seen of the first meeting between Zelensky and President Trump. And this is yet again, the second meeting between the two presidents. His attire not exactly clear, but we do remember that there were harsh words that were spelled out by the U.S. president on his attire as well. We again will have to wait and see how this meeting turns out. But he, this time around, is flanked by senior, very, very senior European leaders from very powerful countries. Again, these are visuals, live visuals that are coming in from Washington, D.C. News just coming in. Zelensky has reached White House. We were showing you visuals of Ukrainian President Zelensky being received by President Trump at the White House. They have just gone in. There is going to be a massive delegation talk between President Trump, who would also be accompanied by Vice President J.D. Vance, is what we have learned. And on the other side, we have President Zelensky, who has senior European leaders, presidents, and the European Union Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, all of them there accompanying Zelensky to ensure that this time around it is not a repeat of what happened last time. That there is serious conversation that is had after knowing very well that there was a meeting that took place between the US President and the Russian President, wherein they walked back talking not about an immediate ceasefire, but maybe a more permanent peace agreement between the two countries. President Trump, ahead of that meeting, had very clearly said that he is not going in to negotiate on behalf of Zelensky, that the Ukrainian president will have to do that himself.
The best I have. I was saying. Ready, face? Every step?
President Trump, show your message to the people of Ukraine as world leaders gathered here today.
We love them. 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 We
Russia continues to attack civilians defending Kharkiv.
Thank you very much, everybody.
The best I had. You say, ready face, every step.
That was President Zelensky and President Trump addressing the media. One question as to what do they have to say to the people of Ukraine. Zelensky went first saying we love them, followed by President Trump saying, reiterating or echoing what Zelensky said, saying we love them. But he did not take questions on Russia and ushered the Ukrainian president in. So in some time from now, we will have visuals coming in of President Zelensky along with European leaders meeting with the US president. Michael, if I still have you here with me, this is an important meeting. The visuals are in. Zelensky has arrived at the White House. The meeting is to begin. It does seem like there is a lot of tension around what is to happen over here. And we were talking about land, but this has more to do with not just land, but also questions of sovereignty, America being the net security provider, no more, and how Europe is going to deal with anything that Trump says from here on.
Yes, and just to quickly get on the visuals, I do see Mr. Zelensky wearing sort of a suit. I think that's a show of respect. There were reports on Ukrainian media that Zelensky was instructed by the White House to wear a suit this time. The other thing I wonder is whether he brought an interpreter with him this time. A lot of Ukrainians criticized Zelensky for that last meeting, that he wasn't able to respond to Mr. Trump quickly or properly enough. So hopefully he has an interpreter.
Okay, more visuals coming in, Michael. Now, these are visuals of President Zelensky and President Trump. These are important. This is the Oval Office, and this is the very same place, the very same position
to have the President of Ukraine with us.
Okay, let's listen.
We've had a lot of good discussions, a lot of good talks, and I think progress is being made, very, very substantial progress in many ways. We had a good meeting, as you know, just a short while ago with the President of Russia. And I think there's a possibility that something could come out of it. And today's meeting is very important. We have, I guess, the seven very powerful leaders from Europe, and we're going to be meeting with them right after this meeting. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. If I can, first of all, thank you for invitation, and thank you very much for your efforts, personal efforts to stop killings and stop this war. Thank you. And using this opportunity, many thanks to your wife, First Lady of the United States. She sent a letter to Putin about our children, abducted children, and my wife, First Lady of Ukraine, she gave the letter. It's not to you, to your wife.
Oh, I want it.
Yeah. So we are saying this sensitive topic, yes, please. And thanks to our partners, and that you supported this format, that after our meeting we can have leaders who are around us, UK and France, Germany, Italy, Finland, EU, NATO, I mean all partners around Ukraine supporting us. Thanks to them, and thank you very much for invitation.
Thank you very much for being here.
President Trump.
Do you think it's fair?
Yes, Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. So, President Zelensky, you say in a post on X today, Russia must end this war, which it itself started. President Trump, you say President Zelensky of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to. Which is it?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we're going to have a meeting. I think if everything works out well today, we'll have a trilat. And I think there will be a reasonable chance of ending the war when we do that.
And is this the end of the road for American support for Ukraine? Is today's meeting deal or no deal?
I can never say that. It's never the end of the road. People are being killed, and we want to stop that. So I would not say it's the end of the road. No, I think we have a good chance of doing it. It's been almost 4 years now that a lot of people were killed last week. A lot of people last week. I mean, millions of people killed, but a lot of people last week for whatever reason. A big number, a lot of soldiers, on both sides. And I know the president, I know myself, and I believe Vladimir Putin wants to see it ended.
And as you met with Putin on Friday, today you've got President Zelenskyy here. As you listen to Russia and Ukraine, which side has the better cards?
Well, I don't want to say that. I'm just here to be, look, this isn't my war. This is Joe Biden's war. He's the one that had a lot to do with this happening, and we want to get it ended. And we want it to end good for everybody. We want it to end good. The people of Ukraine have suffered incredibly.
And to that point, President Zelenskyy, are you prepared to keep sending Ukrainian troops to their deaths for another couple years, or are you going to agree to redraw the maps?
Thank you for your question. So, first of all, we live under each day attacks. That today have been a lot of attacks and a lot of wounded people, and the child was dead, small one year and a half. So we need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners, and we will do our best for this. So, and I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, of personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war, and we are ready for Trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about Trilateral. I think this is very good. Thank you.
Mr. President,
yes. If the peace deal will be achieved, are you going to be willing to send American peacekeepers to Ukraine?
Well, we're going to work with Ukraine. We're going to work with everybody, and we're going to make sure that if there's peace, the peace is going to stay long-term. This is very long-term. We're not talking about a 2-year peace and then we end up in this mess again. We're going to make sure that everything's good. We'll work with Russia. We're going to work with Ukraine, and we're going to make sure it works. And I think if we can get to peace, it's going to work. I have no doubt about it.
Your team has talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you rule that out in the future?
We'll let you know that maybe later today. We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also, and we'll be talking about that. They'll all be involved, but there'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe, but we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
Vladimir Putin mentioned that the war will not end without addressing the root causes of this war. Have you had an understanding what are the root causes of this war?
Well, look, the war is going to end. When it ends, I can't tell you, but the war is going to end, and this gentleman wants it to end, and Vladimir Putin wants it to end. I think the whole world is tired of it, and we're going to get it ended. It was, I've done 6 wars. I've ended 6 wars, and I thought this maybe would be the easiest one, and it's not the easiest one. It's a tough one. A lot of reasons for it, and they'll be talking about it for a long time, but they'll be talking about the others. Look, India, Pakistan, we're talking about the big places. When you look at, you just take a look at some of these wars. You go to Africa and take a look at that. Rwanda and the Congo, Republic of the Congo. That's been going on for 31 years. And so we've done a total of 6, and we really have 6, not including the fact that we obliterated, and it turned out to be a total obliteration, the nuclear, as you said, the future nuclear capability of Iran. And this one, I think we're going to get solved also. I feel confident we're going to get it solved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you tell us about your conversations with European leaders and what they need to see to support an end to the war?
Yeah, well, we're going to be meeting with a great representative group and 7 very powerful, very big countries and great people, all friends of mine and friends of yours. And we're going to have some suggestions made. They want to see peace. They would like to see peace. In the red.
President Trump, do you think it's fair for Ukraine and for Russia to achieve a lasting and durable peace if Ukraine cedes its territories that Russia hasn't yet conquered? Do you think it's a fair peace for Ukraine?
We're going to have a lasting peace. Just to answer the first part of your question, we're going to have a lasting peace. I hope it's going to be immediately. I hope it doesn't have to go on. And I think people of the whole world is going to be very happy when that's announced. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, you posted on social media, Mr. President, a very touching letter from the First Lady. And the letter was hand-delivered to President Putin. And it calls for an end to the war, essentially, because of the children and the children's future. Why did the First Lady feel that letter was necessary? Was it because she believes that Mr. Putin is the aggressor in the war? Is a similar letter being hand-delivered to President Zelenskyy?
So the First Lady felt very strongly. She's watched the same thing that you watch and that I watch. I see things that you don't get to see, and it's horrible. But when she's got a great love of children, she has a wonderful son that she loves, probably more than anybody, including me. I hate to say it, but she loves her son. She loves children, and she hates to see something like this happening. And that goes for other wars too. I mean, she sees the heartbreak, the parents, the funerals that you see on television. Always funerals. We want to see something other than funerals. No, she felt. It was a beautiful letter. It was very well received by him. And she did ask me to say, you know, she would love to see this end. She would love to see it end. And she says it very openly, very proudly, and with great sorrow because so many people have been killed.
Mr. President, last week,
Brian, go ahead, Brian.
Yes, sir. I've got a question for each of you.
Yes.
First of all, Mr. President Zelenskyy, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good on
I
you.
said the one that attacked you last time. See, now he's
I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelenskyy.
In the same suit. You see, I changed, you are not.
Maybe yours is much better than mine. Real quickly, upon peace, God willing we get peace, are you open to holding an election in your country?
Yes, of course. We are open for election, yes. We have to do safety circumstances. And a little bit, we need to work in the parliament, because during the war you can't have elections, but we can do security. We need, maybe, how to say, we need a truth, yes, everywhere, in the battlefield, in the sky, and the sea, yeah, to make possible for people to do democratic, open, legal elections.
So you say during the war you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now, so you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections. Oh, that's good. I wonder what the fake
You like this idea?
Yeah.
No.
Speaking of news, I got a question for you. This sounds insane for me even to ask this, but do you think the American media really doesn't even want a peace deal because they've been so critical of you every step of the way as you lead the charge for peace?
It's an amazing phenomenon. I said that if in the settlement you got Moscow, St. Petersburg, and thousands of miles around them, they would say, I made a bad deal. The level of hatred and animosity is incredible. Not with all. I mean, we have great people up here. We also have terrible people up there that I think are told what to say. But, you know, in solving all of these wars, they don't even write about it. You know, I saw major wars. I saw wars that have been going on for 31, 35, and 37, and a couple of quicker ones. One that was going to go into a full-blown deal very quickly. You know what the one I'm talking about. It was a big one. But they don't even write about that. No matter what I do, no matter what, and you know, this is not anything to do with you. It's probably to your advantage in a certain way. But no matter what I do, no matter what deal I make, from my standpoint, you'll come out good. Maybe President Putin will come out good. But they'll say, Trump was absolutely horrible. It's just that, and I've lived with that for a long time. I've lived with it since just before the first election. I used to get great publicity. Now I get the worst publicity anyone's ever gotten in office, but I won in a landslide, so that people understand. They're the only ones that count, ultimately. But I've also had great reporters. I've had journalists that are very good. But it's very sad when you do the right thing. As an example, they said, because of the fact that Vladimir Putin came to American soil. This was a tremendous defeat for Donald Trump. No, it was really wonderful that he did it. It was a hard thing for him to do, to be honest with you. It was the opposite of what they said, but they said it. Now, if he didn't come, they'd say that was also bad for Trump. You know, there's no way. And there's just a great dishonesty of the press, and I think that's why it's lost its credibility. You know, its credibility is at an all-time low. We have a thing going on right now in D.C. We went from the most unsafe place anywhere to a place that now friends are calling me up, Democrats are calling me up, and they're saying, sir, I want to thank you. My wife and I went out to dinner last night for the first time in 4 years, and Washington, D.C. is safe, and you did that in 4 days. I'll tell you, it's safe. I had another friend of mine, he has a son who's a great golfer, he's on tour, and he came in 4th yesterday in the big tournament where Scotty Scheffler made the great shot, and he said his son is going to dinner in Washington, D.C. tonight. I said, would you have allowed that to happen a year ago? He said, no way, no way. He said, what you've done is incredible. And I think the people realize it. But the press says, he's a dictator, he's trying to take over. No, all I want is security for our people. But people that haven't gone out to dinner in Washington, D.C. in 2 years are going out to dinner. And the restaurants the last 2 days were busier than they've been in a long time. Thank you.
I walked around yesterday with MTG. If you could walk around with D.C. with MTG and not be attacked, the city is safe.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week, you warned of what you called severe consequences if a 30-day ceasefire or any type of ceasefire were not agreed to by Russia. Will there be severe consequences? Does that change because of
I don't think
you
need a ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that. But if you look at the 6 deals that we made peace and you know, long-term, long-running wars, I didn't do any ceasefires. Would I like the concept. You know, I like the concept of a ceasefire for one reason, because you'd stop killing people immediately, as opposed to in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever it takes. But we can work a deal where we're working on a peace deal while they're fighting. They have to fight. I wish they could stop. I'd like them to stop. But strategically, that could be a disadvantage for one side or the other. But all of these deals I made without even the mention of the words ceasefire.
President Zelenskyy, are you disappointed that there's no ceasefire?
The decision to offer Ukraine Article 5-like security guarantees, but stop short of pushing for their full membership?
Yeah, well, we haven't done anything on that yet. If you look back and you go back long before President Putin, it was always a statement that they would never allow Ukraine into NATO. So that was a statement that was made, but we haven't discussed any of that yet. We're going to be discussing it today. But we will give them very good protection, very good security. That's part of it. And the people that are waiting for us, they are, I think they're very like-minded. They want to help out also.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President Trump.
Are you disappointed there's no
The United States has already given hundreds of billions of dollars to this war effort in Ukraine. At best, it is a stalemate, and the killing continues. So, President Trump, how much more is the United States willing to give Ukraine? And President Zelenskyy, how much more do you want?
Well, I'll start off just by saying we're not giving anything now. We're selling weapons. This is something before, I guess the number is well over $300 billion. That was under Joe Biden, a corrupt politician, not a smart man, never was. By the way, go back 40 years, he was not a smart man 40 years ago either, but now he's in particular bad. This was done by a corrupt administration that shouldn't have been in, and frankly, if the right results of the election were given, if I were president, this war would have never taken place, and he would have been very happy, because he would have liked to have seen. I mean, they went through hell. He went through hell. This war would have never happened, and the people that were killed, a couple of million people, a lot of people with soldiers and everything else, and the people that have been displaced and forced into other areas and other countries because of what's happened, none of that would have happened. And I'm just saying that he was a horrible president, whether it was the borders or this. He was just a horrible, corrupt president.
Mr. President,
I can. Thank you so much. So first of all, we have possibility now to buy weapon from the United States. We are thankful for this program and this opportunity. We are thankful for Europe. They pay for this, and through NATO program for Territorial and etc. We have some programs where we can have some money to finance this, and this is a part. I think it's not a part for the war and to defend us. It also will be a part for security guarantees, to strengthen our army, to rearm Ukrainian army. This is very, very important. And it depends how much money we need to rearm. For example, the question of air defense, we spoke about it with President Trump, and I'm happy that we have now bilateral decisions and we work on it with production, American production. Nobody in Europe has so many air defense like Patriots, for example. We need it very much, and this is also about defending.
I think the good news, we make the best military equipment in the world by far. You mentioned the Patriots. How good are they?
Systems.
We have systems, they're literally 100% foolproof, and it's really like shooting two bullets, you know, two bullets hitting each other in the air in a space like this. The chances, 100%. It's 99 to 100%. So we sell the equipment to NATO, and NATO does what, I don't know what the arrangement is that you have with, but I know that they want you to have the equipment. And we're getting the best equipment in the world, but they pay us for the equipment. Under Biden, it was just crazy what was going on. I believe the number is over 300. I think it could be $350 billion worth of equipment and money and everything else. And we've made more progress in settling this war in the last 2 months than they made in 4 years. This should have been settled a long time ago, but it should have never happened. Yeah, please.
Real quickly, you pushed out on social media.
Brian, go first.
You pushed out on social media about doing away with mail-in ballots and potentially electronic voting machines. Can you expand on that and how important that is?
Well, that's a very off-topic, just really quickly. Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots. And we, as a Republican Party, are going to do everything possible that we get rid of mail-in ballots. We're going to start with an executive order that's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots because they're corrupt. And you know that we're the only country in the world, I believe, I may be wrong, but just about the only country in the world that uses them because of what's happened. Massive fraud all over the place. The other thing we want changed are the machines. For all of the money they spend, it's approximately 10 times more expensive than paper ballots. And paper ballots are very sophisticated with the watermark paper and everything else. We would get secure elections. We'd get much faster results. The machines, I mean, they say we're going to have the results in 2 weeks. With paper ballots, you have the results that night. Most people, but most people, many countries use paper ballots. It's the most secure form. So between paper ballots, very, very important, paper ballots, and I think maybe even more important, the mail-in voting. We're going to end mail-in voting. It's a fraud. If you have mail-in vote, even Jimmy Carter with this commission, they set it up. He said the one thing about mail-in voting, you will never have an honest election if you have mail-in. And it's time that the Republicans get tough and stop it because the Democrats want it. It's the only way they can get elected. Because with men and women's sports and with transgender for everybody and open borders and all of the horrible things, and now the new thing is they love crime. They're fighting me on the fact that I've made Washington, D.C. safe. We're not going to get mugged, beaten up, or killed like all the people you've been watching get so badly hurt. I'm glad, I hate to take your time on this, but I'm glad you asked me that question.
Sorry.
We're going to stop mail-in ballots because it's corrupt. You know, when you go to a voting booth and you do it the right way and you go to a state that runs it properly, you go in, they even ask me, they asked me for my license plate, for identity. I said, I don't know if I have it. They said, sir, you have to have it. I was very impressed, actually. But it's very hard to cheat with mail-in voting. As you know what happens in California, it's so corrupt, where some people get 5, 6, 7 ballots delivered to them. Now, we got to stop mail-in voting, and the Republicans have to lead the charge. The Democrats want it because they have horrible policy. If you have mail-in voting, you're not going to have many Democrats get elected. That's bigger than anything having to do with redistricting, believe me. And the Republicans have to get smart. We're not going to have a country. I said for a long time at rallies, you need borders and you need free and fair elections. Those two things, otherwise you don't have. We have strong borders now. In 90 days, Mr. President, we didn't have 1, 0, 0, and 3 months. Not one person came in illegally into our country. In fact, even I find that hard to believe, but it's run by a little bit of a liberal group that put out the numbers, so I guess it's, but 0, 0, and 0. You go back a year ago, 2 years ago, 3, millions of people poured into our country. It was terrible. Thank you very much.
What security guarantees do you need from President Trump to be able to make a deal? Is it American troops, intelligence, equipment? What is it?
Everything. And really, it includes 2 parts. First, strong Ukrainian army. That's what I began to discuss with your colleagues. And it's a lot about weapon and then people and training missions and intelligence. And second, we will discuss with our partners. It depends on the big countries, on the United States, on a lot of our friends.
And Mr. President, are you willing to commit American troops to that NATO-like protection in order to get President Zelenskyy to a deal today?
Well, I don't know if you define it that way, but NATO-like, I mean, we're going to give, we have people waiting in another room right now. They're all here from Europe, biggest people in Europe, and they want to give protection. They feel very strongly about it, and we'll help them out with that. I think it's very important. I think it's very important to get the deal done.
You've been involved with the peacekeeping in Ukraine since your first day in the administration. What would you say to the Ukrainian people right now who are suffering under the Russian attacks and hoping that the American people will stand with them?
Well, I know Ukrainian people. I've known many over the years. They're great people. They're smart. They're energetic. They love their country. I mean, they love their country, and we want to get this war ended. That's all I can do. I love the Ukrainian people, but I love all people. I love the Russian people. I love them all. I want to get the war stopped. Very important.
Mr. President, was there any aspect of your discussion with Vladimir Putin that left you disappointed?
Look, we just spoke to, I was just telling the president, I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat. If we don't have a trilat, then the fighting continues. And if we do, we have a good chance. I think if we have a trilat, there's a good chance of maybe ending it. But he's expecting my call when we're finished with this meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, press. Let's go. Let's go. Move. Come on, guys. Let's go. Thank you, guys. Thank you, press. Thank you. Keep moving. Thank you, guys. Keep moving quickly. Let's go. Thanks, guys. Keep going.
So that press conference or that initial comments at the White House are over. Very civil conversation, very unlike what happened the first time that President Zelenskyy was in the White House and got a massive dressing down. This time, very, very civil. But the message, if not the same, was similar. The world is tired of the Russia-Ukraine war. Russians are tired, Ukrainians are tired, the world is tired. But that question of ceasefire, will Ukraine have to cede territory for that ceasefire? And how much territory will Ukraine have to cede? Of course, this time, the Ukrainian president is also well fortified. Of course, he's suited up, but then there are 7 top European leaders, from the British Prime Minister to the French President, from the German Chancellor to the UN, to the EU and NATO chiefs there with him. So he's well stocked, well armed, well fortified for this conversation. Let's now throw this open for a wider conversation. What do we expect from the dialogue, the one-on-one dialogue that's happening now, and the dialogue that will happen with the European leaders? Joining me on this special broadcast, Geeta Mohan, India Today's Foreign Affairs editor. Sasha Alexandrenko is a journalist who joins us from Ukraine. Sasha, welcome. Seema Sirohi is a well-respected journalist and columnist, joins us from Washington, D.C. Daniel Block, editor of Foreign Affairs magazine, joins us from New York. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar with me on this, as is Sushant Sareen, senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. And Sasha, let me begin by asking you, okay, Sasha, what do we expect? Sasha, what do we expect from this conversation? Is Ukraine willing to cede territory for ceasefire, or is ceding territory completely off the table?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this translation. So I would say that, of course, people of Ukraine and communities, they want to have very, very careful hope for the best and for the ceasefire. But for now, all experience of Ukrainian population, it's every time the ceasefire was announced by Russian Federation, so it never happened. So if there will be no very powerful statements or very powerful sayings from European leaders, from USA leader, so what's going to happen to Russia if they will not follow their promises? I think it's just another talk about ceasefire or about peaceful negotiation, which unfortunately leads to nowhere and make no changes for Ukraine and for Ukrainian population.
Seema Sirohi, in the way you look at this situation, President Trump's meeting with President Putin, now meeting President Zelenskyy, and with 7 top European leaders there at the White House in Washington, D.C. right now, what kind of forward movement can we expect?
Well, the best forward movement would be the trilateral meeting that President Trump talked about, but there's a lot to happen.
Okay, give me a moment. I think I've lost your link. Let me also bring in Rohit Sharma, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Rohit, what's the buzz in D.C.? Will this, as Seema Sirohi was just telling us, lead to a trilateral Russia, Ukraine, US? And what are all the European heads of state and government saying?
Well, look, Gaurav, they had a good, I think, meeting at the embassy, at the Ukrainian embassy, right before they all came to the White House, except for Macron, who directly came from the airport to the White House. They want to achieve peace. They want to be able to nudge President Trump to get a little tough on Russia. I think their concern is that, they don't want to bully Ukraine to be giving up too much territory. So that's number one. The other thing is, that, as you saw President Trump talk about, that he's hopeful for a trilateral. He's saying that it is possible. We'll have to wait and watch how the things pan out. They just headed into a bilateral that will go into, all the leaders will be meeting with President Trump right now. So the first concern that every European leader has is that they want security guarantee for Ukraine, and B, they do not want to have anybody bully Ukrainians into giving too much territory. So we'll have to wait and watch on that. But I think those are 2 things on mind of all the European leaders who are at the White House right now.
Okay. Ambassador Sajjanhar, do you see forward movement? What's changed between February and now, post that meeting with President Putin? Is President Trump indicating no more weapons, no more giving any free weapons to Ukraine? Europe will have to pay for it. Some air defense systems yet, but the war has to end. Is that the impression you get?
Well, as far as the weaponry is concerned, Gaurav, first of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. As far as weaponry is concerned, definitely, this has been made clear quite some time. Even the last time when the consignment of weaponry had gone from the United States, I think all the American leaders, including Trump, Rubio, Vance, were sort of, backslapping each other and complimenting each other that they were not giving free weapons and that they were being sold and NATO would be paying for them. So I think that has been the pattern that has been set after Trump has come in. But I think as far as peace is concerned, Gaurav, I have, what Mr. Trump is doing is really presenting some sort of a fait accompli to Europe and to Ukraine. Because, there have been informed leaks that have been brought out saying that Ukraine will have to cede territory, including Crimea and some of the others, and also that NATO membership is off the table. So this seems to be, this is something that it appears Mr. Trump has agreed as far with Mr. Putin when he met him in Alaska. So it doesn't leave any further scope for, any flexibility or any negotiation or any maneuvering on the part of Ukraine and Europe.
Okay, but all these 7 leaders who've come, and I've got their entire list, Sushant Sareen and Geeta weigh in on this in just a moment. From Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, to Emmanuel Macron, the French President, to Keir Starmer, British Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, Italian Prime Minister, Alexander Stubb, the Finnish President, Ursula von der Leyen, EU President Mark Rutte, NATO General Secretary, the coalition of the willing, Sushant Sareen. Is this for emotional support, or do they want Trump to continue arming Ukraine and this war to continue? Because Emmanuel Macron seemed to indicate that in case Russia is seen as a victor, there'll be trouble for other countries in future.
Yeah, so the problem is going to be that there could be other trouble for other countries, but do they really want this war to continue? Maybe Western Europe wants the war to continue because they are really not losing people, and it's not their territory that's getting the bomb the hell out of. But I think even for the Ukrainians, it's going to be a very difficult job to accept the loss of territory. Look, we know, everybody knows around the world that accepting loss of territory is the single most difficult thing for any sovereign country to accept. So I think one should look at the predicament of the Ukrainians. But then the problem is, what is the choice? By all accounts, there are only bad options. Either you let the war continue and, thousands of people more will die, or you accept a bad deal, which is probably the best of bad deals, and try and get some kind of peace. But then the devil will be in the detail. Will whatever territory is ceded, will it be permanent or will it be temporary?
Okay.
What will be the security guarantees? What will be the nature of those security guarantees? The Russians want that Ukraine be completely disarmed. Will that be on the table? Will that not be on the table?
Totally disarmed and denazified is the terminology that Trump is using, but that may well be a maximalist position. Sushant Sareen, give me a moment as I bring in Geeta Mohan into this conversation, because Geeta, President Putin was very clear. He's not in this for a temporary ceasefire. He wants a permanent settlement, and from what our analysts seem to indicate, that there is no LOC kind of a situation that he wants, that you'll have a festering border with Ukraine. He wants it very clear, no military at the borders, no Ukrainian forces at the borders to target the new Russian territory.
Well, absolutely, Gaurav. Even before the two sides went into a conversation, remember, the US president did not take so many questions from reporters as he did with Zelensky last time around and this time around as well. With Putin, the moment the leaders came in, the press secretary, it was the American side that kept saying, okay, thank you, please leave the room, please leave the room. They did not want any questions because they did not want anything that could scuttle those talks that were really critical and important. And he had already walked back on the demand for immediate ceasefire. So he already knew what the Russians really are coming in to speak on. And the plan was in place, whether it's Russia-US bilateral or, for that matter, what it means to have peace. And like you said, it was not temporary in nature. It's not a ceasefire. He wants complete understanding and clarity on acceptance, on endorsement when it comes to the Donbas region, that's Donetsk and Luhansk, and certainly Crimea. I would have thought it would have gone as far as Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, but that's something that's not been reported or in conversation. So let's see what the conversation today is going to be on Zaporizhia, Kherson, Odessa, but certainly not Donbas and Crimea, which for Russia are off the negotiating table.
So before we listen into what Donald Trump had to say and President Zelensky had to say, Sasha, let's take this region by region. Initially, Sasha, President Zelensky had indicated there will be no question of ceding any territory. But territories that Russia had in control, for example, since 2014, Crimea, or territory that they had in control, for example, 80% of the Donbass region, Donetsk and Luhansk, will President Zelensky be in a position to cede these territories? I'm not even coming to Zaporozhye and Kherson, and Zaporozhye has the nuclear power plant. What will be the repercussions if he has to cede these territories to Russia?
I think that President Zelensky now is a very difficult position because for him to declare that territories, we are talking about territories that was annexated since 2014, like Crimea Peninsula and partly Donetsk and Luhansk region. So his promise to Ukrainian people was not to give up on the territories, and we are still have a huge amount of people who are living on that territory and who are waiting to Ukraine to come back. So in order to not to have all the anger of the military personnel of Ukraine and their families and all the community, President Zelensky should follow his promise and try to negotiate all the territories of Ukraine to come back. Otherwise, so it's legalized annexion of the territories for all the countries in Europe, USA, and even Asia. So it's a quite difficult position and quite difficult situation for Ukrainian president for now.
Indeed, Ambassador Sajjanhar, it would appear as, Sushant Sareen was just telling us, the choice is between bad and bad or from bad to worse, whether he accepts the war that continues or ceding territory, which would be disastrous for his presidency.
No, you're right, Gaurav. I think one really has to look at the least worst of all the bad proposals that are on the table. And I think some sort of, one is the absolute ideal position, which is, what is in the Ukrainian constitution, which President Zelensky has also been mentioning, that there will be no ceding of territory. But, there is something also called realpolitik. And, if you have, Crimea has now been with Russia for the last 11 years, since 2014, February of 2014. And also we see that at least the two provinces that have been claimed, whether it's the Donbass, the Donetsk and the Luhansk, those, I think it will be extremely difficult for Europe, for Ukraine and the West to recover. I think the best case scenario would be really if Zaporizhia and Kherson, if they can be retained, and what are these security guarantees? Because what Putin is trying to do is to say that, there'll be no NATO forces in terms of Ukrainian army also, it will be severely limited. Now that is basically significantly compromising the security of Ukraine. And I think those are aspects on which possibly discussions can take place.
And Rohit, are we expecting, best case scenarios, forward movement is a trilateral between President Zelensky, President Putin and President Trump? The European leaders, and you've been able to speak to some of their teams, are they here for just moral support, or are they here to say, continue giving them weapons, Europe will pay, if Europe has enough funds to pay, given the situation that they're facing? So what is that broader strategy? Okay, you're on mute, Rohit.
No, I think you can hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go on.
I'm sorry, apologies. So one of the things that was discussed this morning was about the fact that, how will this meeting today, or these meetings, would go, right? And one of the things they talked about was that the security guarantee is the most important thing, and that's the first thing that the Europeans want, and they're coming in to support uh, uh, Zelensky on that. That's the first thing. The second thing, I think, what they're trying to do is they're trying to look at what was proposed by Vladimir Putin as those territorial concessions, and it is assumed at this point in time that he's going to take back to his country and then talk about and sell it to his audience or his people. This is what he should do or shouldn't do. So I think nobody's expecting a realistic, ceasefire or end of the war today, or not even, a trilateral summit, a date to come out of it today. I think the goal is to make sure that Zelensky can understand what the US is asking or are relaying what the Russians have told the Americans, and then the Zelensky and the Europeans can talk about the security guarantees. The other thing is, and this is very interesting, Gaurav, is the fact that Zelensky must take these back to home because the Ukrainian constitution requires a national referendum for any territorial changes. And this is a problem. And obviously, the Europeans are saying that's his problem to figure out. But that's been his talking line. That's what he said in this morning's meeting at the embassy in Ukraine. So there are a lot of concerns at this point in time, but there's no timeline. And as far as President Trump and the Americans are concerned, they just want to keep the momentum going. So yes, you heard President Trump say, we'll talk about the trilateral. I think that's what he wants to do.
So
but he
Seema
wants
Sirohi,
to do sooner.
Okay, Seema Sirohi, one is optics, the other is what's happening behind the scenes. So optics are all great. This time, President Zelensky is also suited up. When he was, ushered into the White House, it was very cordial, very polite, unlike what had happened in February, March. But beyond that, what do we realistically expect? End of the road for military supplies to Ukraine to be able to sustain this war? Because President Trump's also making it very clear, we're not giving them anything, we are selling it, and Europe is paying for it.
Exactly. So this is where the rubber hits the road for Europe. And they've all come, en masse to DC. One, to stiffen, Zelensky's back, but also to sort of show solidarity. They will have to increase their defense budgets. They'll have to buy American weapons if they want to do a serious sort of security presence in Ukraine. So in terms of this Article 5 thing, I think there's a big step forward by President Trump to even begin to talk about the fact that the Americans will, in some manner, support the idea of helping to defend Ukraine. If the peace agreement goes through, if the land territory, they call it swap, but I don't think it's a swap. It's like ceding of Ukrainian territory. If all that goes through, if it's acceptable to the Ukrainians, thing is, everyone's tired of this war. And the point is, maybe Putin made a maximalist offer in his meeting in Alaska. He will come back a little bit, but he's going to also have to answer to his people, what did he win from this war after, putting thousands and thousands and thousands of Russians to death. So he's got to show some gain in terms of some territory. So
and that territory has to go beyond the Donetsk and Luhansk region that he had. 88% is what he perhaps has now, from 75 to 88. Crimea he had. So can he retain Zaporozhye and Kherson? And we're not even talking about Sumy or Kharkiv pockets there that he has under his control, according to media reports. Daniel Block, senior editor of Foreign Affairs magazine, New York, joins me on the broadcast. And Daniel, from whatever you've heard from President Zelensky and President Trump, the conversations different from the one that they had in February, but overall, what's the big expectation from this meeting for you?
I think it's hard to say right now because, as you rightly noted earlier, there's what we see happening publicly, and then there's what's happening behind the scenes. That said, I think the fact that this didn't end with a blow-up between Trump and Zelensky will be a positive side for the Ukrainians. And I think that what they're really hoping is that in combination with the other leaders in Europe, they can persuade Trump to continue leaving open channels for them to purchase military equipment to send to Ukraine. I think they still regard it as extremely unlikely that there's going to be a negotiated settlement to the war in Ukraine right now. The sense I have from what Ukrainians have said, from the way the Europeans feel, and from basically the offers that Putin has put forward is that while obviously everybody is tired of the fighting of the war, there's no deal to be had that will leave the Ukrainians happy. And understandably so. I mean, Putin is demanding that Ukraine hand over territory that it still currently controls. So I think right now what Ukraine and its allies are looking to do are to keep the pathway for American support open. That's the goal, that's the hope. And whether or not they'll succeed, well, we'll find out.
Sushant Sareen, one part is getting military hardware. The other part is having trained manpower to be able to operate it. Because a system like the Patriot system, to be able to use it effectively, you'd need to spend not weeks but months and months to be able to master that technology. Does Ukraine have that kind of manpower and that kind of trained manpower to operate all the military hardware that may be coming in?
Gaurav, the problem is not just about the trained manpower. The problem is also going to be, will the Ukrainians be able to get enough people in their army?
Yes.
There are so many reports about people not wanting to join the war, they're trying to duck the conscription that is taking place. And the army is being denuded of soldiers, partly because of casualties, partly because many people don't want to join the fight, right? And you literally are forcing people to join the army. Now, there could be some exaggeration in those reports, but nevertheless, the fact of the matter remains that there is a manpower crisis, not just in terms of training, but in sheer numbers. So there is that crisis as well. Now, you can carry on this war, and like I said, it's very easy for the British to say that, guys, carry on fighting. That has been British policy for 500 years. Make others fight and sit on the sidelines and make a profit of the war. So the Brits would want to do it. Some of the other continental European countries have some genuine concerns about Russia. And maybe some kind of a deal, some kind of security guarantees can be worked out. But Gaurav, also remember one thing, there is going to be a problem for the US as well. There is a problem in terms of, can the European allies trust the US to come to their back and have their back in case of a major conflict? And one of the reasons why the Europeans are coming is also to get a measure of the United States. On trade, they've already given in. They've surrendered completely, abjectly to the US. But on security, if they have to surrender the security also to the US and go along with the whims and fancies of the American president, then where does that leave the larger transatlantic relationship? And for the Americans, the problem is going to be that if they are not even ready to deliver the weapons which the Europeans want to buy and give to Ukraine, assuming that can be done, then that entire transatlantic relationship is thrown in jeopardy. So there, not as though the Americans can simply ride roughshod and not bother about the transatlantic relationship, unless, of course, the Americans have given up on it and they're just playing this game, so that somebody can get a Nobel Peace Prize. And I can't understand this obsession with the Nobel Peace Prize. Some of the most useless people have got that prize. I don't know why everything is revolved around this one prize.
But he sincerely wants it. But Geeta, some of the European leaders you've been speaking to in the past several weeks have indicated that they're also looking at a European defense system in whatever way that's possible, given the kind of attitude President Trump has adopted in the past 6 to 8 months.
Well, absolutely. The Germans, we're speaking to a few others as well, and they are on record talking about how it is now important that they cannot have the United States of America as the net security provider for Europe, and that it was a fair ask, and they're now going to do it. They're looking at depending on each other and having a more secure system of self-defense when it comes to Russia. All that is good because it should have come to this. It should have been about Europe and European security, that they'd look after themselves in a way that they do not push countries at the behest of the United States of America to fall for the NATO narrative, which is what we're looking at, unfortunately, President Zelenskyy fall to. And he did speak of how Ukraine is going to join NATO before the war. He continued speaking of it through the first year of the war, only then to come out and say, well, it's quite clear now that Ukraine is never going to be a part of the NATO. So it's quite unfortunate what's happened. And now war fatigue has set in, not just in Ukraine or Russia, but in Europe as well, Gaurav. So yes, they are looking at how they now need to strengthen themselves to ensure that there is no threat beyond Ukraine in the European Union and the NATO alliance members who are critical to providing security in that part of the world.
Sasha, is there a sense of disappointment in Ukraine? Because Ukraine has fought, and they fought really hard. Geeta and I were on ground zero in Kiev, in Kharkiv, in Mariupol, in Irpin, in Bucha, and we saw how well the Ukrainians fought all along. But more than 3.5 years down the line, is there a sense of fatigue, not just internally, but the fact that supplies are dwindling, help is dwindling, resources are dwindling, and it's a lost cause?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can tell you that the level of the fatigue that is happening on the fourth year of Russian invasion is terrible right now. And I would say that for now, peaceful negotiation brings only despair on the Ukrainian territory, because as I said before, after that we have horrendous attacks, rocket attacks on civilian cities. If you're talking about front line, so yeah, guys are very exhausted. Soldiers are very exhausted, but they lost so much. So in the order of their mental state, they have nothing to lose. So they are ready to go till the end. Of course, we are now in the very huge shortage of men, of manpower, of weapon, and all kind of means that you need during the war. From one hand, and from other hand, we have exhaustion of the civilian population because they are terrorized almost every night. Reported from all the big cities of the huge amount of victims among children, among women, among and etc., etc., etc. So yeah, I can witness that people are desperate in their exhaustion, but still want justice and still want to fight back.
They still want to fight back, but weapon supplies are dwindling, manpower is dwindling. And Seema Sirohi, when you look at the kind of territory that's in conversation, Crimea, warm water port, there is no way that President Putin is likely to let go of this part. He wants not just Ukraine, but even Europe and America to recognize Crimea as part of Russia. Donetsk and Luhansk, that Donbass region, he's in control. Kherson, Zaporozhye, do you think he's going to let go of any of it from the maximalist position? Because there are some experts who say, why would he let go of a nuclear power plant in Zaporozhye that he now has under his control?
Yes, right now it's very unclear what the understanding, quote unquote, was reached between President Trump and President Putin in Alaska. The details, Trump was uncharacteristically quiet and not loquacious. He's used to talking and not knowing when to stop.
Yes.
But in Alaska, he was keeping it close to his chest. Perhaps there are details that he has been told and that he's going to present to the Europeans and to President Zelenskyy to figure out what is the best, kind of give and take in terms of territory. From what I understand, in the southern part, Putin is not willing to cede anything. What he controls, he wants to keep controlling. So right now, it seems to me that President Trump, he is at a point where he can feel that there will be an agreement, and this would be actually, if it works out, would be a claim for a Nobel Peace Prize. Even Hillary Clinton said that.
Except that if it comes without ceding territory, and in this case, that there is no way that that will happen. And Daniel Block, when there is conversation about Schedule 5 kind of security, clearly Ukraine can never be a part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That message has gone out loud and clear. So what kind of Rule 5 security can Europe and US think of providing Ukraine?
There have been various discussions about what a kind of peacekeeping force or contingent could look like, to what extent it would involve US troops, whether the United States might only provide air power in order to back up whatever European forces are stationed on the ground in order to prevent a Russian reinvasion. But I mean, this really is in some ways absolutely central to any negotiations or talks, because the Ukrainians do not trust Russia to uphold any agreement they make, and correctly so. I mean, Russia agreed to various ceasefires and pauses in fighting and peace deals before this invasion of Ukraine, and then only went ahead and invaded Ukraine anyway. So it's a country, Russia, that does not have a history of standing by its words when it comes to Ukraine.
But
and
in
so
Article
there's
5
going to need to be
security,
some sort of
is this an indication, Ambassador Sajanhar, that European troops will be deployed in Ukraine? But if that's exactly what Russia does not want, will they permit foreign troops to be deployed in Ukrainian territory?
This is the maximalist demand of Putin, and he has also stated what should be the number of Ukrainian troops, no foreign troops on Ukrainian territory or periphery. So, I guess as we have been speaking, as the other panelists have also been saying, this is up for negotiation, and basically that is where change could take place. But, as far as territory is concerned, it appears very unlikely that, Putin might be willing to let go of any territory that's under his control. One point I would like to make, everyone seems to suggest that, everyone wants an end to the war. And, Sasha explained it so very poignantly as to what has happened in Ukraine and what is happening there. And Ukraine definitely is the first contender that wants the war to stop. Europeans also want the war to stop because it's a matter of their own security. One country that does not appear to be very keen to stop the war is Russia, because there have been, over the last so many months, there have been so many offers, so many proposals that have been made for a limited ceasefire, 15 days, 1 month, etc. And none of that seems to be acceptable to Russia. And even now, so maybe they they think that they are on a winning spree. They are, they might be making slow progress, but they are getting territory, wherever they are. And so the more that they are able to occupy, the more they'll be able to keep. So
Except it comes at a huge cost. The losses of lives that have taken place, even on the Russian side, the loss to their industry, so many $100 billions of theirs blocked in European banks and overseas. Sushant Sareen, does this make diplomatic or military or strategic sense for Russia to continue to push on and maximize the advantage, or would Russia want that if there is no, if there's a guarantee that NATO is not coming into Ukraine, or they ensure that, as they claim, denazification of Ukraine, then they can look at other options?
No, I think they can look at other options. What if the other option is that Ukraine will not join NATO, but NATO troops by another name will be deployed in Ukraine? Then why would the Russians accept that? It doesn't stand to logic, does it? That the French, the Germans, the rest of them will be putting their troops to guarantee Ukrainian security. I don't see how that's ever going to be acceptable to the Russians, right? That's not going to happen, or American troops coming in. And I don't see how Trump can explain American troops now being deployed in Ukraine to his own constituency. So I think there are a lot of problems in that particular arrangement which people are talking about.
Okay.
Secondly, what might happen is some kind of a iron cast guarantee. Something which happened during, for example, during the Cold War, with Austria, for example. Both sides decided that Austria is not going to be a member of NATO. It won't be a member of the Warsaw Pact. And it had a certain neutrality and nobody really interfered in it. Actually, everybody interfered in it, but there was no war over Austria. Something to that extent might be worked out. I don't know what the diplomats...
Okay, the last 30 seconds I have on this part of the show. Geeta, the Russians are also watching this very closely as they continue, according to the Ukrainians, their attacks on some of the vital assets and vital points, including, as the Ukrainians say, some civilian areas. So that ceasefire is still quite a big dream and quite far away.
Well, could be that, but Kirill Dmitriev, who is the main negotiator from the Russian side, has just put out saying that lasting peace versus temporary ceasefire. Gaurav, that's telling, because that's exactly what the conversation is going to be, whether they want permanent peace or just a temporary ceasefire. And is ceasefire important or more important than peace?
I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me. As this conversation continues at the White House, our reporters on ground are keeping a hawk eye on all developments. A quick break. News and updates continue on India Today.